Good afternoon and welcome to the Pennsylvania Press Club. I'm Francine Schertzer, Senior Vice President of Politics and Policy at PCN, President of the Pennsylvania Press Club, and your host for today's luncheon. Joining me at the head table is Dan Langen of AT&T. Thank you for your support and thank you for being here. The Pennsylvania Press Club Luncheon Series could not be possible without the support of the generous organizations listed on our sponsor banner. Today's luncheon is being taped and will be carried throughout Pennsylvania to the television and streaming audience of PCN. Our speaker today is Congressman Glenn G.T. Thompson. A lifelong resident of Howard, Pennsylvania, Congressman Thompson represents Pennsylvania's 15th district in the U.S. House of Representatives. Prior to being elected to Pennsylvania's geographically largest congressional district, G.T. spent 28 years as a therapist, rehabilitation service manager, and licensed nursing home administrator. Throughout his professional experience, G.T. has touched the lives of thousands of individuals facing life-altering conditions. As a result, he's learned firsthand the importance of access to quality health care and has become a strong advocate for increased access, affordability, quality of care, and patient choice. An Eagle Scout and 30-plus year veteran of the Juniata Valley Boy Scout Council, G.T. has served as Scoutmaster, Council Executive Board Member, and Council President. He's enriched the lives of youth throughout central Pennsylvania. Among just 2,000 presented since 1969, G.T. received the National Distinguished Eagle Scout Award in 2012. G.T. is also a former member of the Bald Eagle Area School Board, past vice chair of the Private Industry Council of Central Corridor, and a former Workforce Investment Board member. Because of these experiences, he was appointed to the House Committee on Education and Workforce in 2009. For more than a decade, Representative Thompson has served as co-chair of the Bipartisan Congressional Career and Technical Education Caucus. In the 115th Congress, Thompson introduced the Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, which passed the House and Senate unanimously and was signed into law by President Donald Trump. A community leader and volunteer firefighter with over 3 decades of service, G.T. is acutely aware of the challenges facing Pennsylvania communities. As chair of the House Committee on Agriculture and a senior member of the Education and Workforce Committee, G.T. is in a unique position to bring his expertise and knowledge to bear on issues facing rural businesses, communities, and families in order to improve the lives of the citizens of the 15th District. G.T. is a top speaker on the House floor. He views this as a responsibility to be a strong voice for the citizens of the 15th District and an opportunity to influence the Washington legislative agenda. G.T. is a proud graduate of Penn State and Temple Universities, where he earned a BS and Master's of Education, respectively. He and his wife, Penny Ammerman Thompson, have 3 adult sons, Parker, Logan, and Cale, and 2 grandsons. G.T. and Penny reside in Howard, Pennsylvania. Let's welcome Congressman Thompson.
Francine, thank you so much for that kind invitation. This is the moments when I wish my wife had come with me. She may be able to provide an opposing view, I don't know. I do want to say that although I've been the #1 speaker, just for the record, I may have been the #1 speaker for a number of days in Congress. For over a decade now, I'm not the most long-winded. Learned a long time ago, it's not how long you talk, it's what you say. And I just really appreciate to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. Really is a pleasure to be here to provide a Washington update and discuss, federal policy influences that influence our Commonwealth. I thought I'd just share just briefly, how I make decisions, which I think is so important. I follow something called principle-based leadership, where I define my principles ahead of time. It really allows me to withstand those pressures are almost like a hurricane sometimes. It comes from party or leadership or special interests or running for re-election every 2 years and those types of things. And principle-based leadership allows you to stand where you plant your feet on stone, on rock, and you'll be able to take those winds of influence that come at you for different ways. And so within that, one of the things I've always committed myself is to do things to legislate from the outside in. A lot of time in legislature where, whether it be certainly in Washington, I'm assuming, I think in Pennsylvania and other state capitals, we to do a piece of legislation, we take maybe 4 or 5 so-called experts and we put them in a room and have them write a bill to address some problem, bring forth some solution. And everybody knows the definition of an expert, right? X stands for unknown quantity, because that's what we get out of them, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. And then once they do that, we take it out and we share it in Washington, we share it with the country, and we try to convince everybody that it's the best thing since sliced bread. You know what? It's usually not. And why it's not is because we haven't embraced and brought to the table, the people that are living with the problem, the people that are dealing with the challenges. And I find those are the folks that know what the solution should be more than anyone inside any state capital or quite frankly, U.S. capital. And so I do things personally from the outside in. I'll reflect on that with my work on the Farm Bill in just a bit. The other thing is to do things not in a partisan way and not in a bipartisan way, to do things in a tripartisan way. And that means that you bring Republicans and Democrats and quite frankly the people that are living with the problems to the table. When I work with agriculture, I bring those. I've had people come to the table that are those who produce food, those who process food, and those who consume food. Oh, that would be everybody. And just one example of doing that from the outside in is my travels over 42 different states and 1 territory, over 115 different listening sessions across the country, bringing those voices, having people come to the table. And I just ask that they come to the table. I never ask anybody to set their values and their principles aside. That kind of defines who they are. But to come to the table and be willing to talk about what we can agree upon and make that the basis for cost-effective solutions. And so I am proud to serve as the first member of Congress in 170 years, actually. It was last time we had a member of Congress from Pennsylvania chair of the House Agriculture Committee. We hadn't yet entered into the Civil War. I'm not saying that person had anything to do with the Civil War. I just have no idea. We had the very first one in 1820, and I'm the third. In Pennsylvania, and also proud to serve as a senior member on the Education and Workforce Committee. In Pennsylvania, agriculture isn't just an industry, it's a way of life. It is our #1 industry. It's a legacy passed down through generations, and it's rooted in hard work, perseverance, and a deep respect for the land. Our farmers don't just feed our families, they drive our economy and strengthen our communities. Right now, that way of life is under attack. Farmers are facing the steepest 2-year decline in net farm income in history. And despite their resilience, the economic challenges they face are mounting. To the point that at the end of 2024, total farm debt was at the highest level in more than 50 years. Rising costs, falling prices, regulatory burdens, and extreme weather events are creating a perfect storm that threatens farm vulnerability. And without the right policies, we risk another farm crisis that would devastate not just rural America, but devastate our nation. When we lose our farms, our ability to feed ourselves, we risk food insecurity. And when you have food insecurity, it's well documented. That's the most slippery slope to national insecurity. And so that's why we couldn't allow that to happen. Pennsylvania is one of the largest dairy producing states in the country. That was kind of my family's legacy on both sides, mom and dad's side of the family. And dairy remains the backbone of our agriculture economy here in the Commonwealth. Yet dairy producers are up against high input costs, volatile markets, and policies that have made it harder to compete. And that's why I've been working to expand market access, including in our schools. We lost an entire generation of milk drinkers thanks to bad science and, quite frankly, bad legislation in 2010. It pushed whole milk and flavor out of our schools. And I'm working with that. My Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act, which recently passed out of the Education Workforce Committee with bipartisan support, broad bipartisan support. That will restore access to whole milk and 2% milk, whole milk being 3.25 milk fat. Sometimes I'll be out and talk with people about that, and I just love to quiz people. How much milk fat do you think's in whole milk? Well, it's got to be 100%. No, that's pretty disgusting. No, that's not right. It's just 3.25 on the average. You may get a Guernsey, gets you up maybe to 4%, but that's pushing it. And it's important because of the nutrition that it provides. The Nutrition Advisory Council has identified the primary elements that are missing in the diets of our students, who, by the way, have only gotten larger. That barometric measurement index has only gone up since we stopped serving milk, and it was replaced sometimes with a lot of sugary substitutes in our schools. But that it is where whole milk is helpful. And so providing kids with nutrition milk options is a common sense step that supports both their health and our dairy farmers. It's a win-win. There are a lot of communities in Pennsylvania that went into decline when they stopped providing whole milk in our schools. Kids stopped drinking it, and we saw a lot of dairy farms that collapsed and went away. And when they went away, the feed stores, equipment places all went away. When that went away, quite frankly, we saw a decline in rural Pennsylvania communities where we lost grocery stores, because once all those employees went away, then the grocery stores left, the community pharmacies left. It's amazing how one bad policy can really impose such economic harm on our rural communities. And when you lose rural America, or what I like to call essential America, the urban decline will be next because of all the essential things that we provide. So last Congress, the bill passed the House with 330 votes, and with new leadership this Congress, I'm confident that our Senate counterparts will be able to take action to get the bill to the President's desk. Both Senator McCormick and Senator Fetterman are co-sponsors of the version of my bill that has been introduced in the Senate, and it's got broad bipartisan support in the Senate as well. So beyond dairy, Pennsylvania agriculture is diverse. We head the nation in mushroom production. We produce top-tier livestock and poultry and supply apples and Christmas trees and other specialty products like maple syrup and honey. I mean, it's very diverse. Our Pennsylvania agriculture is a wide range, far beyond what I shared with you for an example. But farmers across all sectors are facing significant challenges, from costly regulations and environmental mandates to infrastructure issues that threaten farm viability. The uncertainty created by a lack of long-term agriculture policy only compounds those issues. And that's why passing a strong bipartisan farm bill is absolutely critical. Over the past 4 years, again, I've done extensive traveling throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We've done a couple listening sessions at the great Allentown Fair, certainly Grange Fair, and many of my 18 counties, with the third of landmass I represent, but across the Commonwealth and, quite frankly, across the nation. And from those conversations, we developed the Farm Food and National Security Act of 2024, designed to provide the risk management tools and the market certainty that farmers need. Now, last year, we passed the bill out of committee with bipartisan support, but unfortunately, I didn't have a willing partner in the Senate. All I'll say is I do today. I got great partners. I got Angie Craig, and Angie Craig, who's a Democrat in the House from Minnesota, is my ranking member and a great partner, a good friend. And in the Senate, we have Senator John Bozeman, who's the chair, and Amy Klobuchar, who's the ranking member, both dedicated to serving rural America and those who produce, process, and consume. And so we have a real chance to get the bill across the finish line. And alongside newly confirmed Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins, who's become more than a friend, become a partner at serving this great nation, we are working to advance this legislation as quickly as possible. We've already secured, worked hard in December. What we were facing in December was pending food insecurity and national insecurity. Our farmers, whether you realize this or not, they there are some farmers, certainly some in Pennsylvania and across the nation, they borrow more in a single year than what the average family borrows in a lifetime. And that is borrowing money in order to have the capital to produce a crop or a herd or a flock. And because of the economic harm that they've been experiencing over the past number of years, the bankers, that includes our community bankers, farm credit or credit unions, the only thing they could do in a prudent way is to say, I can't lend to you anymore. You have spent down all of your generational wealth. That resulted actually in a few suicides around the country and just a lot of gloom. And so I remember the first time I walked into the Speaker's office and I made the case that, if farmers don't farm, people don't eat. And then we become dependent on other countries, and that leads to national insecurity. And the Speaker gets it. Mike Johnson has a great ag district in Louisiana, and he looked at me and said, how much do you need? Well, I gave him a figure. It's negotiations, right? You start up here, right? I named a certain amount, and his eyes got this big around. And he says, I don't think we can do that. I said, that's okay. Let's just keep talking, And eventually we got to the part we were able to provide and secure $10 billion in emergency assistance in December, in the December funding bill. And that's just it really is just a Band-Aid though. But it was enough that the credit opened up, and our farmers are farming, our ranchers are ranching. Those who are involved in poultry that haven't been devastated by highly pathogenic avian influenza are producing protein, producing eggs. But here's the thing, if we don't get a farm bill done in the first part of this year, I fear I'm going to have to be back in the Speaker's office this coming December, really begging for more financial assistance so we do not experience food insecurity and national insecurity. And that's why it's so important we get this farm bill done sooner than later. And in this farm bill, I remain committed to strengthening the farm safety net for our producers, investing in locally led working lands conservation, promoting integrity and nutrition assistance, really important to me, important part of the farm bill is nutrition, and prioritizing agricultural research. The avian flu outbreak has underscored the importance of strong federal support. Animal diseases don't just impact farmers, they drive up costs for families. That's why we see eggs where they're at today. Now, I will say I'm pleased within the past month or so, since a 5-point plan was released by the administration, the cost of eggs has come down significantly. It's got a long ways to go. Why are the cost of eggs so high? Well, if you kill millions of chickens, they're not laying eggs, and it's simple supply and demand economics. And so we've got a 5-point plan. Be glad to talk more about that if that's something you'd like more information on. Certainly important to Pennsylvania. And so Secretary Brooke Rollins recently announced the 5-point strategy, and we can talk more about that in detail if that's something you'd like to talk about. Let me just say a little bit about Secretary Rollins. I'm just thrilled that this woman is the Secretary, the 33rd Secretary of Agriculture. 2 weeks ago, my phone rang at 5:45 a.m., and I'm thinking, for those of you who know him, it was probably Mike Firestein or some dairy farmer who was had gone to the barn. I had one of those calls this morning. It was a dairy farmer. I don't know if he was going to the barn or in the milk house or coming back for second breakfast, but that's normally who it is. And I have to admit, I didn't get out of bed to answer the phone. But the more I laid there, the more guilty I felt. And I got up and I checked it, and it was a message from the Secretary of Agriculture. And I'm thinking, I love this lady. She's got the work ethic of a dairy farmer at 5:45 a.m. And I checked the message, and she said, we're going to be, President Trump's first cabinet meeting will be that morning, and I will be making a formal presentation on the high pathogenic aviation influenza and then we're going to be making it public, and I just want to make sure that you're up to date with everything before we do that, which I appreciate it. But you know what I liked even it was more cool? The fact that there was a presidential cabinet meeting, and we were going to talk about chickens. You know, as an ag guy, I was good with that. And then finally her message said, and you need to call me back, GT, because I really want to talk with you before I talk with anybody else this morning. But you got to call me before 7 or after 8 because I'm in Bible study. I'm thinking, this is perfect. I've got the best partner I could ever ask for working for America's #1 industry and Pennsylvania's #1 industry. You know, there's a lot here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit of some of my prepared remarks. I'm looking forward to talking with education. You know, having worked in healthcare for almost 3 decades, 28 years, 29 years, I guess, and count my internship. It is, you know, I've learned about how you solve problems. And in healthcare, you don't do it in a vacuum. You bring in the patient, you bring in the family, you bring in the team. And so that has been my philosophy in terms of addressing problems and issues here for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and quite frankly across the nation. And so it has allowed me, since it's needs assessment, it's need-based, it should come no surprise that the things that I've been most successful on, the things that I've really focused on have been the needs found here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You know, whether it be certainly agriculture, #1 industry, the essential industry, food, fiber, building materials, energy resources, broadband, because agriculture deals with digital broadband connectivity. At the Farm Bill, it's an important part of our rural development title. Education, my work there with advancing career and technical education, including being in the Oval Office when President Trump signed my Modernizing Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century. And that was an exciting day for a kid that's from a town of 600 people to be in the Oval Office. But you know what's a better day? When I'm out in these career and technical education schools and I find we no longer have vacancies, we have waiting lists. And I find that these kids, these young people, and quite frankly, adults, because sometimes we do dual track programs, when they graduate, they've got a diploma and certificates and specializations in one hand and multiple job offers in the other. And you know what they don't have? They don't have a debt that they have to carry that, you know, that is really going to impede their ability to really do the things in life. Energy. When I was first running for election in 2008, I heard about this woman that lived north of Interstate 80. I was really anxious to meet her. Her name is Marcellus. Obviously, she's some lady. She has really delivered for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and she's got a lot more potential out there. And she's got this cousin named Utica. You know, and it's a family, it's a team that talk about a bright future for Pennsylvania. And so I was pleased to be one of the first chairs of the Congressional Natural Gas Caucus and to work on energy policy. Healthcare, which is pretty surprising, but I come out of healthcare, obviously, so I'm very passionate about that, but my cutting edge work was really with telemedicine, which is pretty good for a guy my, because I think within my age cohort, I was the last person to have an email address. But with whether it was the STEP Act with President Obama or the VETS Act with President Trump, expanding access through telemedicine, increasing access to quality care, and actually positioning us so that we can bring the best and the brightest of these physicians to rural America, because they can serve urban communities from rural America where they can find a lifestyle that you know, with less crime and less traffic and lower living costs and just a beautiful, wonderful resources. So, and without my glasses, I can't read my own. Nutrition, which is so important to me. And then finally, that working on things, solving problems or finding opportunities for what's over the horizon. And quite frankly, that includes digital commodities. Digital commodities, cryptocurrencies, is the responsibility of the Agriculture Committee. Didn't know that. Made my head hurt. But we're on the cusp of doing legislation right now that will protect consumers and quite frankly, but will foster innovation for the future with the digital commodities market. Right now, it's about $3 trillion in economic impact. And America has always been number one when it came to Internet 1.0, which was the Internet of Information. Internet 2.0, which where we live today, was the Internet of Things. And Internet 3.0, which is the Internet of Value. And I'm really proud of the fact that I think we're in a good place with that. And a lot of things on education with career and technical education and the ACE Act, which offsets the impact of poverty. That's an area I lead in terms of Title I funding and just a lot of things. But Francine, let me stop there. That was longer than what I'd hoped to go, and really looking forward to the questions here.
I will combine. There were a few questions here about the avian flu. Secretary Kennedy isn't supportive of developing a vaccine for bird flu, though poultry farmers are begging for it. Is your committee advocating for a vaccine?
Well, I'm surprised Secretary Kennedy is interested in eating sick chickens. I'm not. I like my food to be healthy. We use vaccines. We've always used vaccines to overcome various various diseases. I would welcome an opportunity to spend about a half a day, at least, with the Secretary Kennedy. He doesn't do much that really is within my realm with agriculture, but I'd like to be able to show him just how healthy our food supply is today, because American agriculture, Pennsylvania agriculture, is science, technology, and innovation. So I think this is just a discussion that we need to continue to have, and I look forward to weighing in with Secretary Kennedy on that. But when it comes to livestock, that's USDA. And that's the Agriculture Committee. It is an issue. Vaccines are an issue with our trading partners, because we have trading partners who do not believe in science. They get into emotional things and political science. And so if you vaccinate, it's hard to trade, especially broilers, meat chickens, overseas. That's something we need to continue to work on, and we have a lot of education that we need to do in that area.
What is your message to farmers, especially dairy, concerned with the impact of tariffs, and do you share their concerns?
I'm always concerned with tariffs, that's for sure. But I will say I'm really pleased. Looking back retrospectively at Trump 45, first time around, we expanded markets dramatically under President Trump's leadership. And it didn't get a lot of attention, unfortunately. It didn't get a lot of press. But in the African continent and Asia, new markets, maybe not full-blown trade agreements, but individual commodities breaking access into different places. The China One deal was amazing. Unfortunately, because President Trump had negotiated that, President Biden was hands-off. In fact, he didn't even fill the two key agriculture trade positions, which was the chief agriculture negotiator at USTR and the undersecretary for foreign agriculture and trade 2 years into his administration. Now we did work with I worked with Secretary Vilsack, and we provided about $28 billion in offsets using the Commodity Credit Corporation Commission to offset impact of tariffs and duties. We'll stand prepared to do that again. I'm not sure it's going to be necessary, though. I mean, he's been very effective. The president's trade policy is not tariffs, but it's a tool. I mean, you can address trade discrepancies using soft diplomacy. Everybody always does, and nobody ever makes progress. And quite frankly, this is the President Trump has made progress, and not just for free and fair trade. We are April 2nd. We're supposed to go to reciprocal tariffs. I'm all in on that. If you put 100% tariffs on my wheat, then we'll put 100% tariffs on your wheat. It's a biblical eye for an eye, right? And I think we'll see those tariffs begin to go down at that point. He's used them very effectively, starting with Canada and Mexico. Not about a trade war, but about a drug war. I don't know about you, but as I go into elementary schools, it's amazing how many of these kids have siblings or parents that died of fentanyl overdose. It is the public health crisis of our lifetime. And the president reached out to leaders of Canada and Mexico and said, unless you do step up and do a whole lot better at stop sealing those borders, not allowing that evil drug to come into our country from Canada and Mexico, we're going to put a 25% tariff on you. And guess what? They did step up. The president of Mexico has put 10,000 troops on the border. Canada's using Canada's using technology with more folks on the border. And I think it's going to make a difference. When Colombia turned around 2 planes full of convicted murderers and rapists and pedophiles, the folks that were here illegally, they came back. They landed back in the United States, and President Trump said to the president of Colombia, "That's fine. We're going to put a 50% tariff on top of your tariffs that we have already." And you know what the president of Colombia said? "I'll send my personal plane to pick those people up." So it's a tool. And it does create angst, absolutely. Unfortunately, when you get into a trade war, the low-hanging fruit is agriculture. And I'll give one example under President Obama when I was first elected. There was something that happened in China with Chinese tires. I don't even remember exactly what it was, whether it was a safety issue or a fairness issue. But President Obama put tariffs on Chinese tires. And you know what China did? They put tariffs on American ducks, turkeys, and chickens because that's the low-hanging fruit, because people have to eat. Now, I think it's immoral, actually, to put a tariff on any country's food supply. But it happens. And I also think that the Trump administration and President Trump himself learned a lot in that, what I call that 4-year dress rehearsal. And then 4 years to plan under the America First Policy Institute. By the way, who the president and CEO of that institute is now the Secretary of Agriculture. The cabinet member is closest to President Trump, and that's a good thing when you're chairman of the Agriculture Committee.
Will changes to immigration law impact the labor needs of Pennsylvania farmers?
Yeah, very much could be. Right now, I just sent communications. It's kind of cool. I guess there is a benefit to, I guess, doing the job for a while. I mean, the experience, the wisdom, but most importantly, the relationship is the networking. So just this past weekend, I sent a personal text on their cell phones to Secretary Noem, to Secretary Chavez DeRemer, who, by the way, was on my Agriculture Committee last term, and to Secretary Brooks. And it had to do with, the pending, specifically with people who are here legally, but they're here under Temporary Protection Service, TPS, or something that's called parole, which I'm still sorting my mind out on exactly what that status is. But they're here legally and they're working. Not all of them, but there are a lot of those folks that are working in the agriculture space, and there is discussions about how that will be repealed. I was just expressing that, because I weigh in with differing opinions. Obviously, if you just always tell the truth of what you feel, you don't have to remember what you tell people. And so I was just communicating that if those folks are all exiting the country in this coming year, it's going to leave a huge gap for workforce. Without workforce, it's going to impact agriculture processing and agriculture production. And we shouldn't do that until we have a viable alternative. And by the way, I'm working on one of those right now. I formed a task force in the 118th Congress in a bipartisan group, 8 Republicans, 8 Democrats, and we looked at developing alternatives on how do we fix the work visa system to make sure we have food security going forward. And it's not a path to citizenship or anything like that. It's providing certainty for the people that feed us and clothe us and provide us building materials and energy resources. And it includes both production and processing. And we do have that language. And I'll be putting that out for feedback, actually. I believe that's important. That's how you bring people to the table. And so I do have concerns. It is challenging today. I mean, we have dairy farmers who've gone out of business, not because of the economics, because they can't find people to milk the cows. We have specialty crops here in Pennsylvania that those melons and different cantaloupes, different crops across the country, they don't get harvested because they can't find the people to do it. And these are good paying jobs. They're hard jobs. You're working outside. It's the kind of thing we used to have a lot of young people do, right? Preparing for football season. But we don't have that anymore. And in fact, with the inflation we've been experiencing, farmers are competing with convenience stores where people can work inside in air conditioning for $18, $19, $20 an hour. So it's challenging. So we need that component of foreign workers who are here legally and respecting our laws, and quite frankly, doing well of supporting their families back home.
Why haven't we made more progress bringing broadband to rural America?
Part of it is, I think, because there's been not enough focus on end mile and middle mile. This farm bill that's proposed, and it will soon be the Farm Food and National Security Act of 2025, with some tweaks, because I'm always open to what we can learn and what we can do to do things even better. But the rural development title, and specifically in that telecommunications area and the broadband area, significant. We're going to continue significant investments with that. And it's not just USDA. The Appalachian Regional Commission is a great partner. A lot of Pennsylvania is within that region, and they can help with projects. But it's unfortunately, some of it has been just too much of, and I get it, because technology changes so rapidly. Instead of going after those who have no access, those who are suffering under digital divide, they're rebuilding what they just invested in 3 years ago or 5 years ago, and that's part of the issue. We're trying to change that. One of the most innovative things, and I had to fight my own staff on this with the Agriculture Committee, because I'm blown away by satellite, and I do think at some point it's going to be satellite. I may be wrong, but I just have at some point in the future, not now, but we've never dealt with satellite in the Farm Bill. And when I propose it with my ag staff, and I've got the best staff, but I also like people that challenge me, so I got great staff that do that each and every day, including my chief that does a really good job. But it makes me better. And they challenged me, and they said, well, Congressman, Chairman, we can't do that because we only really invest in hardware. I said, well, let's think about this. There are places in my congressional district that you're never going to see fiber. They just live too far back some hollow or on some mountain. There's no places that you're never going to, Wi-Fi is just not going to work because of the canopy of the trees. But there may be places that perhaps satellite would work. So we have provisions within this Farm Bill, and it will be as we reintroduce it, that says that, not for everybody, but for somebody who qualifies, low income, we will help with the purchase of the hardware. We're not going to pay the monthly fee, but we'll help them get started. And so that is breaking some new ground when it comes to this issue. But it is an amazing tool for economic development. It's a great tool for helping people pull themselves out of poverty. They can learn about, it helps them. That's another piece of legislation I'm working on, Community Services Block Grant, which is, it's Head Start, it's a lot of things. I also believe we ought to have a program in there as a navigator to help people living at low income understand how to better use, the digital highway to be able to get education, to be able to find a job, they kind of pull themselves up, and also see what programs are out there that can help them do that.
Do you support the elimination of the U.S. Department of Education?
What I don't support is the elimination of any of the vital services that are provided. Career and technical education, I'm a national leader on that. Title I funds, which offset the impact of poverty, absolutely important. Higher education, making sure that people have the opportunity to finance their higher education, hopefully greater opportunity with a return on investment. I do believe in financial literacy. But I'm not tied into any bricks and mortar when it comes to that. The Department of Education has only been around since October of 1979. Thank you. Yeah, and back then we were number one in secondary education, number one in higher education, and we were what we spent per child was was significantly less, meant about $4,000 maybe or less per child. And today it's over $16,000, and we've lost our standing. And so as long as those vital, I think what's important is making sure the vital things that are done. Also, maybe there may be some better alignment. Career and technical education, I don't know, does that fit better with the Department of Labor when we're filling jobs? I mean, I don't mind being creative with this. It does require, the dissolving of any agency, though, does require congressional support. So given the makeup of the Senate needing 60 votes, I'm not sure it's going to happen. Now, it's not to say we won't get a skinny version of the Department of Education. And as long as we're meeting, I do believe that education is the pathway to opportunity. And it's very important. But could we do it better? Yeah, I think so, in terms of from a federal perspective. When you think about education, it's a pyramid, right? It's sort of like your rights that you have. At the very top of the pyramid is small, the apex. That's the federal government. It's just a tiny part of education. And then there's the, quite frankly, then you have the state, and then you have the counties, the local communities. And so I think we've kind of got that inverse, despite the fact that federal government still has the very smallest part of dollar contributions to education, especially after the past couple of years. It's had a significantly greater control over education, and I don't think that has been for the best.
Give us a progress report on the new speaker. How is he doing, in your opinion?
Mike Thompson is a great guy. He's a brother in the Lord, and Mike got that position basically from Survivor Island. Everyone else got voted off the island. He was the last guy standing. And honestly, I think he'd admit that. But he has really risen to the occasion. He's a constitutional lawyer. I don't hold that against him, being a lawyer. No, but he's just a genuinely great guy that loves the country, and he brings people to the table. He's got his hands full because the diversity within both the Republican and the Democratic Party, the interdiversity is significant. I mean, the extremes are more extreme than ever, and so if I had to give him a report card, I would point to budget reconciliation, which nobody said could be passed. We knew it was going to be partisan. Budget reconciliation is always partisan, no matter what parties has the trifecta of control, or Democrat or Republican. And we got that done. A lot of credit to his leadership. And most recently, a continuing resolution. And we have Republicans that have made a pledge, and I've learned it's really important. Never say what you'll never do, because you don't know what the next day will bring. But only one member veered away from voting for the continuing resolution. Based on those two historical votes alone, he's doing pretty good.
How will Congress ensure Medicaid rates for nursing homes are not cut, given our state's heavy reliance on the provider tax to draw down federal funds at the risk of being cut?
Yeah, as the only former licensed nursing home administrator out of the House and the Senate, you're talking my language now. Medicaid, medical assistance only pays today, when I stopped practicing, 40 to 60 cents on the dollar. I mean, that's how much these wonderful institutions, how much money they lost every time they took somebody that was on medical assistance. So you need the payer mix, right? To make that up, you need Medicare, which pays about 80 to 90 cents on the dollar, and you need more than that. You need private insurance, which used to be $1.30 for every dollar cost. I'm not quite sure where it is today, but it does make the difference. There's a lot of this political discussion on this, and a lot of people are throwing this around. I don't see where there's going to be any cuts to Medicaid. If anything, I would like to see us do some savings, and there is savings to be had. I mean, there is the amount of fraud and abuse that's out there, and we actually have an administration that's serious about digging in deep and doing investigations and finding, what are the patterns that facilitate fraud and abuse. There are some program integrity things that we can do. Let's think about it. Today we have no work requirements or when I say work requirements, there's two options. You're either working, well, it's what we do in nutrition, right? The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that's in my area. There's not going to be any cuts to SNAP. But in the SNAP program, if you're between the ages of, right now it's 18 and 54, and you're able-bodied, if you're disabled, you don't have to do this. If you have preschool children at home, you don't have to do this. If you have elderly, sick parents, disabled parents you're caring for, you don't have to do this. But if you don't fit any of those exemptions, for SNAP, you are expected to either be working 20 hours a week, or quite frankly, more importantly, as someone who leads in career and technical education, be engaged in 20 hours of career and technical education. If you're living in poverty and you're able-bodied and you meet all that criteria, and you're on medical assistance, you're there because you don't have a job. You're there because perhaps you're living in poverty, maybe you're among the working poor. And so, so there's an example of a program integrity that I think serves people that are living in poverty, you know, again, able-bodied, certain age range, serves them well because it gives them a shot at the American dream because we actually pay for them to be engaged in that education, the career and technical education or education. Now, I'm not talking about a bachelor's degree, although there are great places like Susquehanna University that I could point people to, or Penn State behind you. And I probably messed up because I may have other constituents in the room. And I apologize to anybody I missed. You know, I'm not talking about bachelor's degree, though. I'm talking about a certificate. I'm talking about training. I mean, there was a company again that does, and I know that we have some folks here from the trucking industry, you know, that were in to see me about a program they have. It's 4 weeks long, quite frankly, and and it's hard. I'm not driving a truck is not an easy thing. There's a lot of responsibility in it, and you know, and a lot of miles, a lot of seat time, which isn't necessarily good, maybe good for you all the time. But you can make over six figures. You can make six figures by doing that with 4 years of investment. And so that's an example of a program integrity issue. But I am not anticipating, I don't see any cuts to Medicaid. I don't see any cuts to the nutrition programs. There are folks that are seizing on to that. In fact, my Democrat friends are going to have a hearing tomorrow about the cuts to SNAP. And it's all a complete lie. It's all a political lie. Unfortunately, it's politics. So it's legal. You can legally slander and lie in politics. It's okay. That's the way it is.
Do you have concerns about Chinese nationals buying farmland near sensitive military operations? And if so, what can be done about this issue?
I do, and we took action with appropriations, but I have provisions within the Farm Bill that would make it so that the sale of any agriculture asset, and that's both production and processing, farm or manufacturing plant, and Pennsylvania kind of leads the nation in food manufacturing. If it's sold to a foreign entity, it would have to be reviewed by the CFIUS board, which is a multi-jurisdictional board, and they look to determine, is this a threat to national security? Now, believe it or not, they've never looked at agriculture before, which I think is ridiculous because I think it's our biggest vulnerability in terms of food insecurity. And so that will be a part of the Farm Bill. Now, this is not a new issue either. Give credit where it's due. The state of Pennsylvania, decades ago, Japan was buying stuff up. Now, I have to assume because Japan's highly dense population. It's an island. They have only so far they can go. Huge, you know, it's densely populated, limited agriculture, and they were buying up land here in Pennsylvania and in other states. And so the state of Pennsylvania already has in place a limitation of how much acreage can be bought. Now, whether that needs to be revisited, I don't know. China, that we know from the standpoint, and we're talking mostly about, we're not talking about people of Chinese ethnic origin. This is not anything like that. This is the Chinese Communist Party. We know in South Dakota there was a purchase of a significant swath of agriculture acreage, and it was in proximity to a military base. And it was purely used, the proximity was used for spying. And so that's what's made this resurface. I think we do have, we're taking measures to be able to address that in the Farm Bill.
Do you have any concerns about layoffs at agencies like the FDA or the USDA that might compromise food safety?
No, I think that it is time for these are difficult times. I mean, it's a huge threat. I don't know where we're at, $35 trillion in debt. The key is not what the structure looks like. Can we deliver the work? Can we deliver the job? We've got very competent, the recommendations are made by DOGE, which is not an official department. In fact, it will go away here probably in July. But they're just making recommendations, and President Trump has said this will be up to the secretaries who are now Senate confirmed to decide which positions are which. Now, I'll give you another issue, though I disagree with the president on, and his administration anyways, and that is the buyouts. I mean, I'm a recovering school board member. I can remember buyouts that the state of Pennsylvania did on teachers. And I know what it was about. If you can encourage the more seasoned, more highly paid, more productive, more efficient, more effective teachers to leave, then you can hire young teachers that you don't have to pay them as much. And what do we have today in Pennsylvania? We have a teacher shortage. And so I've tried to point this out to the administration, that the buyout program, and there's been a lot of folks have signed up for that, the people that are leaving are the most productive and the most efficient. And if this movement is about increasing efficiency and increasing productivity, I'd like to encourage them to stay, and I'd give them a license to actually do their job, to exercise that. And at the very least, let's let them be the ones that train their replacements. And so I'm not a huge fan of these early buyouts. We need these people. We need workforce, right? And although, the private sector is going to benefit from it, because hopefully a lot of these folks are going to continue to work, and they'll find places in the private sector, and they can take that body of knowledge. So there's maybe a positive aspect in the private sector where people are looking for highly skilled and qualified, but it's an issue it's a mixed issue.
We'd like to thank Congressman Thompson for joining us. We have some mementos for him. These gifts are compliments of the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg, PCN, and the Pennsylvania Press Club. In closing, we want to thank you for joining us. Our next luncheon is Monday, April 28th. For scheduling information, visit our website, papressclub.org. Thank you all for joining us.